Oh no, no, my coffee's cold. Sorry about that. Oh, so
Hello and
hey,
welcome to the incredibly ineptly unprofessional Sugar, Silk and Stretch, a unique boxing podcast brought to you by one ice cool presenter and a couple of ex-pugs who I work with just simply because I like them. My name is Ben Doughty.
my name is Michael Silkolashide.
And I'm Gary Stretch.
That was really good, actually. That was really good, Gary. You could be in films. Believe in yourself, son.
Thank you. Was the
Guys,
delivery, what was good about that?
it was just really cool and like it was just
No,
I don't know.
it's
It just felt
suave.
like a pro.
It was suave. You know, we're
Trying
speaking with the
to
S's here.
take a
It was suave. Suave is wine, Michael.
taking a
Don't,
page
please
out
don't
of
give him any
Franklin's
suave.
book, Silk. I've been getting private lessons from Michael about silk.
Sugar,
Yeah.
silk, and suave stretch. I
I
like
called
that.
Michael last week. I said, Michael, I've been having issues with my rough exterior. Could you teach me to be more eloquent and silk? And so we've had about 4 sessions so far, and I guess
Yeah.
it's working. Thank you,
I
Michael.
Sounds
teach him,
good.
I teach him not to be so hard when you roll. Don't roll your R's too hard. It's gotta be smooth. You gotta like.
Yeah. Listen, guys, we have selected. We've taken this opportunity with this episode. We wanted to do a focus on Joe Calzaghe and his legacy, etc. But before we get on to that, there was some boxing action this weekend. I went to a show at York Hall last night. The iconic venue in London's East End. For anybody who doesn't already know that, great show actually. But I know. Gary, you had a few remarks to make about the Jack Catterall's unanimous decision win over Jorge Linares last night in Liverpool, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it was what it was. To be honest, I was more impressed with Linares than Catterall. It was a chess game. It was it was the end of a great career for Linares. I think he announced his retirement afterwards. But I was more impressed with a good display of bravery from Linares than I was impressed with the young lion Catterall, who's still got so much to do in his career. He was very mediocre. I thought he could have upped the ante. He hurt Linares at one point, but it was a very safe performance, and for me, a very boring fight, really.
His trainer, Jamie Moore, said that Linares wouldn't have, even a peak Linares wouldn't have beat Jack Catterall, which seems hyperbolic, does it not?
Rubbish. Linares still gave a great account of himself and looked good at moments, sharp, and it certainly wasn't a changing of the guard for me. Catterall did okay, did well, but he didn't super impress me. And what more importantly, I think, Ben, is when you're a young fighter, which is what we're going to get into later, I think, with Calzaghe, when you're a young fighter like Catterall, you've still got so much to prove. I think you have to entertain a little bit more, and that could be taking chances, pushing for the win rather than coasting for the win. So for me, it was a decent performance, but very under. It wasn't great.
No.
I wouldn't go. I wouldn't run to watch another Catterall fight.
One of our viewers has just said, should Catterall stop making a song and dance about being the uncrowned, undisputed champion, as he calls himself? I don't know about that personally, because I think he's right to feel aggrieved that he didn't get the decision against Josh Taylor. I think Josh Taylor is a better fighter overall than Jack Catterall. I think he just had a bad style matchup for him, and he lost that night, Taylor. I think he did get a gift, whether he admits it or not.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that fight, and
Yeah.
I thought he had lost that fight as well.
But so you can't blame a guy for shouting about it and saying, I think he said, Josh Taylor, where you at? Let's do it, that kind of thing. I think it was some more profanity used. But I would like to see that rematch because.
Did he say get stood on?
You know what I'm finding, Ben?
Did he say get stood on?
You know what I'm finding? It's like,
I love that saying.
I know Ben's going to have his opinion on this one, but if you look at the Fury fight, which is coming up with Ngannou, and Jake Paul against whoever, like what is becoming more and more financially advantageous for fighters is the entertainment value. And so like we've shifted into an era where being a good fighter, to get a win is okay, but you're not going to make the money unless you entertain, which is why I think Conor Benn has risen quickly, because he's all out. He's like, he's either kill you or get killed. Even Eubanks, puts it out there. I mean, you've got to do more than just win fights now to make money and to get bums on seats. And I think, it was a very safe fight for Catterall in the way in which he won it. And I think that, now to make the money and to make the kind of get the bums on seats, you've got to be more entertaining. And it's becoming very obvious with the ridiculous fight of Fury and Ngannou. It's not about who's the best boxer. It's like, it's going to be entertaining.
You say it's going to be entertaining.
Trying to get rid of all of that.
It will be entertaining, Ben. Whether
might be a disappointment. I'll watch out.
If Tyson Fury just absolutely obliterates him, it will be entertaining. If he doesn't absolutely obliterate him, it will be entertaining. If Ngannou hits him with a shot and knocks him out, it will be entertaining. I mean, I don't see a scenario that won't be entertaining.
Did people expect Ali versus Inoki in Japan to be entertaining? I believe they did.
I don't think that's this, because Ngannou is a ridiculous puncher. We all know he has one chance of beating Fury, which will be knock him out, or he's going to get beat.
Did they say that about Conor McGregor?
Conor McGregor's a puncher. Conor McGregor's not a puncher, not in boxing. Couldn't break an egg.
There you go.
Conor McGregor, I think he's a big enough dude to be a hard enough puncher if he turns it over right. I think that's what Mike's really training him for. I've kind of mentioned that before, that Mike is training him to get to win one way, and that's knock him out.
I would love to train Conor McGregor for a fight because I think he has certain physical attributes that could, but I don't think he's being coached right at all. He's not taking advantage of what he has. Mayweather fight, for most of it, I felt it was pretty embarrassing, the performance. It was like, but I think Conor could be coached. But I think I'm not sure now if he could be coached if his head's in the space, because he has so much success. I'm not sure if he wants to do the work anymore. But if he was going to be a fighter, he needs a different coach, that's for sure.
Sure. In any case, moving on to what we agreed would be tonight's theme, and we also said that it might be interesting in the coming months on this podcast for us to explore little spotlight features on certain fighters of note over the years. There was a guy called Christopher Carter on my Facebook page who said, I would love to hear you and Silk and Stretch's opinion on Joe Calzaghe. Clearly, he's a Hall of Famer, an international boxing Hall of Famer. He was undefeated in 46 professional fights. And, I certainly think he ranks as one of the best super middleweights of all time. But given that that's a relative...
Do you feel that way, Ben, because do you think the super middleweight division is short on talent? Or do you think it's
a young
Joe's talented?
It's a young division, Silk. So the question I would ask you, let's say first then, is do you consider him an all-time great in any context, or do you simply regard him as a super middleweight all-time great with the caveat that that's a young division?
That's such a convoluted question. I mean, it goes just so many, like the answers that come back and just go so many ways, circuitous ways, let's just say. But I really appreciate Joe. It's like this. You look at his record, and he has an incredible record, 46-0, and I'm not sure how many knockouts, but most of his knockouts, as you could tell, were, they're bottom heavy. They happened at the start of his career.
Yeah.
And then once he started to move up in terms of competition, the KOs came less consistently. I don't know why. Maybe he had hand problems. Maybe not. I'm really not sure. But there's one thing that he always showed, and that is, heart is, yes, he had the heart. It's that work attribute. It's that fearless. The work attribute is just something that can't be touched on him. He's up on level with, in that case, with guys like I don't know, you name it, like Razor. Sorry,
like Pacquiao.
Yeah, it's and he would, as was just mentioned on the screen, throw 1,000 punches. He'd do whatever he needed to adapt to win a fight. And that's one of the things I really liked about Joe. I like the way he'd take a man's heart. He'd test your heart.
I'll tell you what's
Yeah.
interesting about Joe is that I saw an interview with Eubanks. I don't know whether I can't remember when and where, but I remember Eubanks talking about when he fought Calzaghe, after a round, he felt he had a big problem in front of him.
Yeah.
So whether or not people think Calzaghe is one of the all-time greats based on opposition, of which he fought amazing opposition, but late, like he fought an older Bernard Hopkins,
Bernard Hopkins and Roy
fought an
Jones.
older Roy Jones, but you've got to remember he was an older Calzaghe too. So, you can't negate that he fought Roy Jones after his prime. Calzaghe was certainly after his prime too. So
on that, Gary, I would say the Hopkins win stands up because Hopkins went on to achieve some major things after he lost an ugly close fight to Joe Calzaghe.
right.
But Roy Jones was an absolute carcass of the fighter that had once been Roy Jones Jr.
Well, you
And
say
I don't set anything
Roy had
for
a
that
couple of
talk.
Roy
There
had
were
a
still
couple of-
guys that would not beat Roy Jones, but
I don't think
Roy
anyone
Jones
would
we're
beat
talking
the
about.
Roy Jones. Let's just put it clear.
Including Calzaghe, right? If they met when
I
they were
don't,
younger.
I love Joe, and let me tell you something. Joe Calzaghe is one of them fighters that you have to get in there with him to appreciate him. He may not look. I've dealt with these guys in my career. I've dealt with them in sparring. I've dealt with a couple in the fight game. He's extremely strong as an individual. Like, he's a strong man. He's got a good chin. He's very fast. He's very busy. He's probably very awkward. He's probably just a nightmare, period. It doesn't mean he's the most technically perfect or whatever, but he's like a difficult man to beat.
His spirit, the kid is indomitable.
Yes.
He gets hit and he comes right back at
I've
you.
never seen a man ever get hit and come back faster than Calzaghe.
And
Calzaghe,
somebody like he's the kind of way in which he fights is that's the kind of guy that takes your heart away. You know what I mean? Like, you fight those kind of guys, and no matter what you do, they're always answering. There's always an answer.
Do you know, Michael, I like the way you always talk about even ex-fighters and even dead fighters. You talk about them in the present tense, which makes them immortal. I'm not taking a piss. I mean, I like the way you do that. I like the way the way he fights. It's like it's still happening for you. It never stopped. They're immortal.
No, Calzaghe is the heartbreaker, because whenever anyone gets a little success with Joe takes it off immediately.
Gary, the way some fighters, they lose a fight. Maybe good fighters lose a fight and say, "Oh, I realize I made mistakes. I'll go back to the drawing board. I'll put that right." Whereas Joe would make those adjustments in the ring, always, every time whenever he struggled a little.
I tell you what Joe did. He never left anything in the chamber. When Joe fought, he gave everything he had. I think a lot of that.
Adrian Walters, I would pick.
I think a lot of that, and this is a subject we can talk about, was there's definitely something when you have your father with you.
Yeah,
it's imagine you having a fight in the street and your wife's with you. Like, you can't afford to lose, right? There's a certain amount,
even in the chip shop, yeah.
Yeah. I didn't have anyone with me. That's why I got knocked out. If I'd have had Silk with me, maybe I'd have slid around the fish. No, I think that there was
I can't fight you. I'm wearing my good Silk.
Yeah.
No, I think there was definitely it's something I would like to talk to Joe about. I think when you enter into a fight, they were such a formidable team, a beautiful relationship, father and son. And I can imagine as a young boy, I can imagine growing up as a young boy with your father and the time they spent together alone, in times that people don't see, that this incredible bond was formed. And I think that them kind of bonds give a young kid, and he turns into a young man and then a man. But it never leaves that there's this drive that you can't beat us, not me, us. And when you're fighting for your father, because his father's give him so much of his time and his life and his love, it becomes a very, very difficult person to beat, because he has a mission. He's bigger than him, And I think that was a part of Calzaghe's career that maybe no one's even looked upon. But when you fight with a reason, I think that's why Joe, it's like if you hurt Joe, he almost panicked, like, I have to take it back off you. And then he took it back off everyone, which is why he broke so many hearts and won so many fights.
Do you know, in his autobiography, on the back of it, he says, I've always had this obsessional need not to get beaten. And it didn't say to win. It said this obsessional need, desire not to get beaten.
And I wonder why.
Well, here's the one thing that I really like about Joe. It's almost like fighters when you have, like, he wasn't exceptional in any one thing, but he was but he was excellent in a lot of things, in most things. You know what I mean? So, so what I say by that, when I say that, I mean, like, he didn't have a lot of power, but when you're a guy who comes into the ring with a lot of power, you end up losing. Like, if you lose, you'll lose because you're dependent upon your power. If you're super fast and that's your thing, that's what you're leading with, when you lose, you'll end up losing because of that.
But you know what? Eubanks said he got shocked in the first minute when Calzaghe hit him. He said he heard him immediately.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
he dropped him.
He dropped
him,
I'm not saying he's. I mean, there's a difference between a guy that's going to buzz you and the guy's going to put you on your ass. I mean, it's
he did put him on his ass, Michael. Yeah, he floored him in the first round, Eubank.
Okay, so
Eubanks not an easy man to floor, you know.
No,
yeah,
you know that.
But what I'm saying is when you depend on one of those attributes, power, speed, whatever it is, you end up losing because of that. And because Joe wasn't a power puncher, or wasn't perceived as a power puncher, he had to do everything exceptionally well in order to win. And that was his thing. So instead of going, like, some guys are going to come in there and they're going to just come in and use their power, and the guys are going to adjust to that, and it's predictable. And like, say, Arturo Gatti. And so when you're dealing with a guy that overpowering him, power isn't the be all end all. Overpowering some certain fighters is not a good strategy. You need to pick them apart and do the things, you know what I mean? As you know. Now, because that wasn't Joe, like, Joe was exceptional in all the areas.
I think his IQ was underestimated because
his fight IQ was incredible.
It's not about winning, like for you to have the ability to not allow Roy Jones to do what he wants to do, even an old Roy Jones, to not allow Bernard Hopkins to do what he wants to do, that in itself, forget what you do to Joe, but to Bernard Hopkins, but to not allow Hopkins to do what he wants to do to you is an
but the thing is, that's what comes to. Can I say something right there with those two fighters, with Roy Jones and Bernard Hopkins? One, it's a bad matchup for Hopkins because I believe that Joe Calzaghe is a better reflex fighter. And I think where he beat Roy Jones is that he had more reflex than Jones had at that time. Roy's reflexes were not the same.
We should take into account, it's only fair to point out, lots of people thought that Hopkins won that fight. Loads of people. I didn't. I scored it for Joe, but it was an ugly fight, and there was a Rizzler between them. I gave it to Joe. I scored it for Joe, but I was watching it with two other people. One thought it was a draw. The other one had it for Hopkins. Loads of people thought Hopkins won. Huh?
Tell him to have another drink.
It's really hard with
Hopkins. He never beat Joe.
With Hopkins. It's very hard. It's very hard to score some of his fights because the way in which he fights, and sometimes you don't feel like counting certain punches because they're like, roughed on an angle from a different. At a different, I don't know. It just felt different to me the way Bernard Hopkins punches, and he does like a lot of tricky stuff, and some people may say it's bordering on the foul side of things. He does a lot of things that the natural eye.
Hopkins
but he isn't a clean fighter, like a clean scorer, like you'd see. Like Roy Jones is.
Hopkins, if you remember, made the ridiculous racist comment, "No white man will ever beat me." Do you remember that?
White boy, yeah.
No white boy. So he put a bone to chip on Calzaghe even before they started, and so there's no space in boxing for racism or in life.
I think he said that more than once, though. Didn't he say that to the last kid?
And it's sad.
He said it to Joe Smith Jr. Yeah.
I think that Hopkins is. When I listen to him, I think he's quite an evolved man. He's had a life. I think he has a bone to chip still. Maybe his past, But there's no space in boxing for racism. The stupid comment about being white or black is irrelevant. But he put his foot in the sand, and I think not young, but Calzaghe, he laid down the glove, he picked it up, Calzaghe, and he gave him an extra spur, like he gave him a reason not to lose also. And so it became, I think that was a comment he shouldn't have made, because I think Calzaghe was never going to lose after that. I think that's just part of Joe's mental strength. So,
whether he used it for fuel or not,
I'm sure he did. But I just think Calzaghe is underrated in the fact that, again, I say it's one thing being able to do what you do, but it's another thing when you can stop someone doing what they want to do. And Hopkins was very good at doing what he wanted to do. Roy Jones and many others. Calzaghe negated so many fighters' great skills, attributes, and then had a way to do enough to beat them. But the stopping of them, allowing them to do what they did with so many others, has not got to be underestimated. With how
with a lot of guys, what happens when you're fighting is you throw punches when opponents allow you to throw punches. When the fighter's in a perfect place for you, that's when you let your hands go, when you think you can hit them. And that's the thing with Joe Calzaghe. He can let his hands go at any time, at any point in the ring that he wants to let him go. He'll start his combinations on the outside and end up moving in and catching you with he'll start with 1, 2, 3, miss you with 3, and hit you with 4, 5, 6. You know what I mean? And that's what a lot of fighters aren't able to do that. And that's a highly advanced way of fighting. Like, you throw away the first 2 or 3, or you're using him as cover fire. They get you into the range and you hit him with the next couple after that. And I think that's one of the brilliant, nobody's really seen that or pays attention to those things about him. But I've always admired that.
I'll tell you what else is underrated with Calzaghe. It was the stripping of if you look at both the Hopkins fight and the Jones fight, he would take the best attributes. Example, when Roy drops his hands, or Hopkins, Joe would drop his hands and put his chin out, and he would, the psychological destruction he did of people was so underrated.
I got to make it clear, Gary. I give Joe no more credit for beating Roy Jones than I do Trevor Berbick for beating Muhammad Ali. That's how bad he shot.
Let me tell you, Roy Jones was past his prime, but I don't believe that Joe would have been a prime Roy Jones. But I don't take that away from Joe. I don't think anyone would have been a prime Roy Jones.
I think it's meaningless, that fight. Not the Hopkins.
No. I think Roy Jones, and he even went on later to do other things. But I think Roy Jones, all due respect, would have.
Roy Jones did nothing after that. Roy Jones did nothing after the Calzaghe loss. Nothing. Literally nothing.
I think Roy Jones would have beat a lot of average, even good fighters at that stage of his career.
Silk. You know I am the production guy Nazi. Can you put your handsome face right in the middle of the screen, please? I don't want to see half of that beautiful face. Listen,
since you put it that way,
Calzaghe, yes, I've got to be careful. I realize I've got to approach your ego like I'm walking up on a squirrel. Norman Mailer said that about Muhammad Ali. That's you, that is. Now listen, his critics, Joe Calzaghe's critics, cite the Robin Reed fight in 1999. They say he lost that fight. I personally, once again, I don't think so. I gave it to Joe. It was close. Do you have a view on it, Gary? Do you remember at the time how you saw it?
I remember the fight. I love Robin Reed, but no, I think Joe won the fight, fair and square. He edged it. He was slightly better throughout. He got most of the rounds. I thought he won. No, I have no qualms with that.
You know, that happens sometimes, Michael. It passes into folklore that a guy was robbed. Like, they say that about Mayweather and Castillo the first time. For what it's worth, without inviting a discussion on that, I thought Floyd won that fight. Once again, close, but I thought he deserved it. Holmes Witherspoon, same thing. I think Larry rightfully won it. But most people will tell you that Spoon got robbed, that Castillo got robbed, and they'll say that Robin Reed got robbed. It becomes a narrative sometimes, doesn't it?
Yeah, I didn't see the Reed fight. I remember Reed was nice. He won the silver medal coming up out of the Olympics.
Bronze,
Bronze, yes.
I
1992.
also think that when you get certain fighters like Larry Holmes or like Calzaghe, they expect you to win so convincingly, and if you don't, then it
So
becomes
true.
controversial.
And if the opponent does a little better than they
A
imagine,
little
then
better than
suddenly
you
he can draw.
expect, then they give him far more plaudits than they should. And I think
Thank you.
that they expect so much from these guys, and no, he beat him. It was not a great night, maybe, but it was enough. I felt certainly never lost it. That's a fact.
Yeah, fair enough.
Floyd
So-
W won, and so did Joe against Reed.
So we seem to be in agreement that it seems our consensus, and we didn't discuss this. Simon backstage asked us what our opinions were, and we said we hadn't discussed it together, and we were just going to go in cold. Now we seem to be of the consensus view that Calzaghe was an all-time great and a wonderful fighter of many attributes, who just was the full package, really. I mean, all right, you
He
could
was
talk
the full
about
package, but the only question or would have been like if he had fought somebody of exceptional talent at their prime, which is the kind of any fighter that you have questions about their greatness. That's generally it. Did they meet somebody like Sugar Ray met Tommy Hearns when they were both in their physical prime? Did Muhammad Ali had? I don't
Let me
know.
ask you this question, guys.
Yeah,
Why do you think that Joe Calzaghe never got to meet the greats in his prime? Talking
There was no one in super middleweight at that
talking
time.
Hopkins, talking Tony, talking was Mike McCallum on the edge of that career?
not really.
It was a little bit
Mike
past
is a
his
super
prime.
middleweight now.
Do you know, Roy wasn't anxious for the fight either. Roy said he would never ever go to the come to the UK to fight Joe. He said that. Roy said he wouldn't travel outside the US to fight anybody. He said last time he did that, he got absolutely shafted in the 1988 Seoul Olympics. And he said Gerald McClellan made that mistake and came back in a wheelchair. He wasn't. Roy was not. Roy was all about the good old US.
Mick Thompson asked a question, and he asked. He said if Calzaghe had the balls to fight Carl Froch.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about that? I've always had mixed feelings on Carl.
Frank Warren commented the other day. I watched it. He said that Calzaghe wanted the fight, and it was Froch who didn't want the fight.
No, Froch wanted it, Gary. Froch was eager for it.
No. There is a video on YouTube. Go online. Frank Warren said he said Joe was very. He said he used to have panic attacks, etc., etc. But he said he had many conversations. He said he offered the fight to Froch on a number of occasions, and Froch didn't take the fight.
No, well, listen.
I don't know.
It was only relevant right at the end of Joe's career. It was literally right, same way that Froch didn't want to fight DeGale, and he decided it wasn't worth it, couldn't be bothered with it. It was the same syndrome with Calzaghe. Froch was knocking on the door. I remember an item on TV when BBC briefly got back involved with boxing, and someone had given Froch Calzaghe's number to phone him live on the TV show, and he said, "Hello, it's Carl Froch," and it was a Sunday or something, and Joe's like, "Oh, all right, how you doing?" Bit embarrassed. And he said, so what do you think realistically the chances of me and you getting it together are, mate? That's Froch. And Joe Calzaghe said it's all about the money. You know that. And it was Calzaghe who had other fish to fry, not Joe. Sorry, not Carl. He was desperate for the fight.
And what do you think would have happened?
Calzaghe would have won. Handily.
Ironically.
Yeah. I was thinking, because I could understand the criticism of Joe about his quality of opposition, and I don't rate the win over Roy Jones at all, but I still think he was one hell of a fighter. And listen, you could say Carl Froch has a better resume or a deeper resume than Joe Calzaghe, but Calzaghe is a better fighter who would have stood Carl on his head in all likelihood,
I think it's timing too. Was there ever a time they were both in their primes, or was one slightly past the other? I don't know.
I think Calzaghe was before Froch.
I think so.
Froch was coming up. Like I say, it was an identical situation when James DeGale was the mandatory for Froch for the IBF. and he badly wanted to fight the Gale. His people wanted it. Ambrose Mendy, someone you know, Gary, who it was a catalyst in you actually coming on this show randomly.
I'm amazed that we never got to see Joe and Ben.
But then you know what? Nigel was kind of shocked by them because here's what happened, right? Nigel lost to Steve Collins the first time on that. Remember that night of it was he twisted his ankle the first time, right? And then they fought again on November the 9th, 1996. It was that blockbuster night when Holyfield shocked the world and beat Mike Tyson. But you remember you had 6 world title fights, 3 in the UK and 3 in Las Vegas, all on the same pay-per-view for only a tenner, by the way, $9.99 I think it was on Sky. And remember when Ben retired on his stool because he realized he didn't have it anymore. So Steve Collins, shortly after that, was supposed to fight Joe Calzaghe. That's the fight he was training for.
It's incredible when you think Joe Calzaghe, the most predominant, dominating super middleweight of his time, never fought Ben, never fought Collins, never fought Froch, never fought... there were so many fighters. Now, was that... You're telling me it's all Calzaghe's fault?
No, not at all.
I think Calzaghe was avoided by many people. It's just a fight nobody wanted.
Well, listen, Steve Collins was supposed to defend the WBO title against him on
what happened?
Sheffield. Well, he got a blister on his toe, pulled out, and then retired permanently. And then, so that's why Eubank stepped in. It was a vacant title. Eubank was getting ready to fight Mark Prince on the same bill, yeah. And then next minute they said, "Listen, Steve Collins has pulled out. He's retired. The WBO title, we can make this you versus Calzaghe for the vacant WBO super middleweight title." So Eubank, who was training for a light heavyweight fight, just ever the pro and the old stager, sheds another 7 pounds, and he fights Calzaghe instead on like a week's notice, something like that. And then after losing to Joe Calzaghe, and that's a very credible performance from Joe, by the way, in his first step up, his first world title fight, beating a guy like Eubank who still had a lot left. And afterwards, Eubank said, "Steve Collins must know something I don't." So it was Steve that swerved that fight. Whether he cares to.
He would never beat Joe. Steve.
Yeah, so take a look at Adrian Walters' question here, Ben.
Go on. It says ringside had Joe and Carl on with Johnny Nelson, and Carl said if it went 12 rounds, Joe would have won. If it was a KO, then Carl said he would have won. I personally think Joe would have won. Exactly. Mate,
I think most people think Joe would have won. It's always interesting when people say, when they use that kind of comparisons to me, like when they, not Aiden, but the one he got the quote off said that if it would have went 12, it would have been blah, and if it would have been a KO, it would have been that kind of thinking never made sense to me for some reason. I don't get it.
Go on, expand.
I don't even know if I could expand on it. It just seems like such an inept kind of way of judging a fight. If someone's going to win by knockout, I guess he's saying it's going to be.
It's be this guy. It's funny. Another popular one online these days is it's either A late or it's either A early or B late. They like to hedge their bets. You've seen that, Gary. They'll say either such and such wins early or else the other guy will win late. I see that a lot.
Yeah, it's like you're trying to cover all bases, and the biggest, broadest statement, and that's you're considering yourself to be a fortune teller by that.
Which on this show we're not allowed to do that. We've got a league table, haven't we? Gary is 2-2. I am 2-2.
I think back to the point with Joe.
I'm 2-3.
When we're talking about a career of Joe Calzaghe, I think Joe was everybody's nightmare in the division. He's a fight that you're not going to get him out of there very easily, and you're not going to outwork him. He's extremely durable. He's extremely got a high IQ, and I think he was just a nightmare for everybody. And I'm not sure everyone ran in the direction to fight.
His level of conditioning was insane. Like the punches he would put out. I don't know if a lot of people can understand it unless you've really tried it, but that the work rate that he would set, you take a guy like very talented fighters and you'd put him in there with Joe, and they're talented for the first 3, 4, 5 rounds. But once that heat starts hitting you, and then you start to see, you know what I mean? Then you start to see what's up. And that's
he
when he
did
just
something.
separates.
And
Because
I think that's
never
what's
seen him go a slow
underrated.
round. I've never seen him go a slower round than he does a faster round. It's incredible.
And that's I think that's one of the sides of Joe that's underrated, was that he had incredible strength of mind. It takes a great strength of mind to be that kind of fighter.
He was a winner, a born winner. You know, he did one thing. You talk technically and about talent. He did one thing that I don't believe I've ever seen before or since. When he fought Jeff Lacey, right? And everybody was talking, you know, Jeff was called Jeff Left Hook Lacey. So there's lots of emphasis placed on his left hook. And Joe was a southpaw, of course, yeah? Now, you two being boxers and with great intellects, I want you to picture this, and I want the audience to picture this as well. So Lacey throws a left hook at Joe, yeah? And Joe's southpaw. Joe, standing southpaw, which you can't really appreciate on this camera, Joe rolls underneath that left hook the way you would, right? You can picture this in your minds, guys. You're both boxers. He rolls underneath that left hook and he hit him with a left uppercut. Have you got that? I've never seen. And then after the left uppercut landed, he did it more than once. He span off with that, what some people call a check hook, you know, that pivot hook. To roll underneath.
I think that's what happens when you're trained by your dad.
Yeah. Is that what happens? He says,
it's like, you know what? But it works. It's like, it wouldn't work for anyone else in regular life. It's not something you would teach anybody to do. It's just,
you wouldn't, would you?
Not because it's unpredictable or it would work. It probably would never work for anybody ever, but it worked for Joe in that case because it just did. It just happened to match up perfectly.
And that was his crystallizing moment. Regardless of people might say Lacey was overhyped and overrated, he was knocking everybody out. He'd annihilated Robin Reed and all the rest of it. And that was his night when he looked like Sugar Ray Leonard and Meldrick Taylor, you know, hand speed, roll into one. He was absolutely beautiful that night. And when you talk about boxing masterpieces, you know, where there's just complete beautiful dominance of one fighter by another, Calzaghe and Lacey is right up there.
Yeah, I remember looking at that fight, and that's one of the things that I was waiting for Lacey to get started, and it was just never coming. You know what I mean? Like I thought, and that was an absolute blowout, and it.
You know what's they have an incredible relationship now, Lacey and Calzaghe. I believe a great friendship, and I think that's you know, when you share blood and you have them kind of fights. I remember seeing something again where they have a real strong friendship now and love and regard for each other, which
it's easier to be it's easy to be friends when you're the one that did when you win.
When you won.
Yeah, when you won.
And you know, Joe wanted to pull out of that fight. You know that, Gary and Michael. Joe wanted to pull out the fight because he had a bad hand. You know, and you spoke before, Michael, about you're very seldom 100% injury-free a lot of the time anyway. But he was going to pull out, and because he pulled out against Glenn Johnson before and he pulled out other times, and sometimes people called him sick notes. His father, Enzo Calzaghe, said, Joe, seriously, Joe, you'll be a fucking laughingstock if you pull out of this fight. He said, and not only
Frank Warren said this the other day, that he used to get panic attacks and pull out.
And he said,
and then you have a conversation with him, and he'd get back on track, and he'd go and win the fight. But
he said, Joe, this will be the easiest fucking fight you've ever had.
Yes.
This will be the easiest fight you've ever had in your life. Do not pull out. That's what he said about the Lacey fight.
Yeah. And then he got his head right, and you know, you can't. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. In fact, it gives Calzaghe more credibility than anything, because my dad once called me a hero when I was a kid because I was afraid of a certain fight, but I went in and I won the fight. But I told my dad before the fight, I'm afraid, Dad. And he said, it's okay. You can be afraid. And I said, okay, I just want you to know. And we went in and I won the fight. And afterwards he said, Gary, you're a hero because people are not afraid. Who cares? But when you do something and you're afraid, then you show great courage. So it's not about not being afraid. It's about going through with it and prevailing. I was afraid most fights I had.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I was never.
One of the questions. One of the questions I had. Sorry.
Was you afraid, Michael?
I was like Joe's defense. He didn't have a conventional defense. Like I don't recall him ever blocking anything, rolling with punches, slipping. You know, I didn't see any Duran or Benitez or you know.
Why did you change the subject just?
Why?
I said to you, was you ever afraid? And then you went on about defensive Calzaghe.
Oh no, sorry, I didn't hear that part. Probably because I was
Yeah,
listening to myself
he does
talk.
that sometimes.
Well,
I do
I
that
said,
often.
Michael, was you afraid when you fought? Joe had this incredible role.
This is how you get accused of being.
The audience want to know, Michael, was you ever afraid before fights, or generally?
No, I'd never. You kind of. I don't know. As a fighter, I always accepted my position of like it's going to be what it's going to be. Like it's like whatever's going to happen. It's going to be. It's predestined, no matter how I look at it. And I always thought I was going to win. I always, even fights where I got blasted or whatever. I always thought I was going to win. And
Ben?
Yeah, you know what? One time I had there was a kid at school called Joe Blackwood. He was my big rival at secondary school. We fought 5 times in the amateurs, sometimes in the championships for the Northern Division of Western Counties final a few times. He beat me the first 3 times. The 4th time I beat him, and I had to fight twice that day, and I won that particular region and went through to the next round. So the thing is, right, Gary, he's beat me 3 times, although they were close fights, but the people at school were giving me hell for it. He was a hard kid. He came from a children's home. He was a black kid. He was the best break dancer. I was seen as a bit of a kind. People saw me as a bit of a swat and a white boy, the middle class boy who lived in a nice house down the road and was. Some people never accepted I was for real, and it's like, yeah, Joe beat you. I finally beat him, and I got a lot of credit for that. And then I remember thinking,
you got to make a movie about that. I tell you.
Yeah.
Right
So
there.
anyway,
We're
working on it.
So, and we'll have Gary play you. I like this.
There we go. Yeah. Well, he's
He's
got the
called
haircut
the 4
already. Listen. So I bashed in the glory of beating him, and then I thought, fuck me, what if I have to do it again? Can I really go through that again? He's beat me 3 times. I beat him just now. And I thought I really wasn't looking forward to having to do it again. So anyway, here's what happened. There was a club show, and I was supposed to fight a guy, whoever it was, on this club, just some working man's club in Stroud, Gloucestershire. And my guy didn't turn up, my opponent. Joe Blackwood was there. Next minute, we're in the toilets. I'm in the toilet. He comes in, and he goes, I'm fighting you. And I'm like...
Your heart goes smooth.
Yeah, honestly, because they just sprung it on me. They're very like,
Yeah.
Your opponent hasn't turned up. Blackwood's here. You guys can fight again. And I remember thinking, I'm not ready for this. Not just on a club show, did you spring this on me like literally a couple of hours before? Not even a couple of hours before we get in the ring.
Yeah.
So I said to him, all right, okay, it's war, but I wasn't very convincing when I said it. So what I did, I thought it's the oldest trick in the book. I thought I'm not fighting him tonight. I'm not doing it. So I threw my gum shield down a fucking ravine. There was a big drop outside the club, whatever, and I just threw my gum shield into it. And I said, I haven't got my gum shield. I can't fight. I'm to be honest, I was already about 15 at this point, so I shouldn't have been doing that kind of thing at this point. I already had a fair few fights. So I threw it away. His club saw that a mile off and were like, come on, fuck off. So they said, it's all right, we've got a gum shield you can use. Here you go. Sorted. Here you go. Just bite down on that. And I said to my dad, no, I'm not happy with this, and I'm not fighting. And my dad, talking about the father thing again, he said, come on, sort yourself out.
He knew what it was about. Yeah.
And there was a line in a book that we liked about Sonny Liston when he fought Floyd Patterson, and it was this book by Peter Wilson, the old Daily Express writer. And he talked about Liston. He likened Liston at one point as a hangman peeping through the Judas window. And my dad said to me, come on, go peep through the Judas window. And it turned me around a little bit. So I did fight Joe Blackwood. And that night, I really stuck it on him in the first round, and he retired with a bad hand and said he wasn't coming out for the second. So I beat him again.
And then
what did that teach you?
What happened about your dental after you using someone else's gum shield?
No, that's nasty. That is
nasty. But it was you just have to boil it and remold it, don't you? That's what happened.
It was.
So you boiled it there. Okay, I thought you put his like.
I thought he pulled it out of his sock and
his mouth guard in your mouth.
No, we boiled a kettle but I do believe it wasn't a new gum shield. I do believe it was a second-hand gum shield remolded for me. But it did teach me something. Obviously, it taught me, that when you're trying to bottle something, you have nothing. The fear is irrational. Fear is just irrational. In that David Bowie song, fear is in your head, only in your head.
Do you know what fear is? What they say, the fear is false evidence appearing real.
Yes, I've seen that one, Gary. Yes, indeed. Yeah.
So
that was my story.
You know what's interesting, Ben, is that when you've shit yourself like that, right, for a minute, the panic attack, and you throw the gum shield in the ravine, what happens is you get a spin back effect, where you get angry about yourself for letting yourself down, and then you get doubly strong by the time of the fight.
You know
You were
what I
so
think
right, because I
happens?
was
You
punching
know what I
myself in the
think
face.
happens with something like that, because it is psychological. But
Now
what
you
happens
say,
is
"Fuck that! I'm angry at
that fear
myself.
you end up in,
Now I'm
it
gonna
ends
win."
up empowering you. The
Yeah,
fear ends up empowering you. You without even noticing yourself, without even purposely doing it, that fear allows you to be faster, allows you to be more powerful. Like one of the hardest things, and I'm sure Gary, in your career, you've had that as well, is like I fought some guys that are scared, and when they hit you, because they're so tight, it's almost like they hit you with like a lead pipe. It's crazy. The fear they're punching at with the fear they're punching you with is just like it locks up and just hits you. It shocks the whole body. So you have to be,
I love a bit of fear.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
do.
we're
I
biologically
don't.
built that way. We're wired that way to
Let me
respond to
tell you
fear.
something. People, the problem we have is we're raised with like insecurity. They look at it as a negative. I look at it as a very positive. I don't like overconfident people. I think that it's the biggest turn off I've ever seen in my life. When you see someone who's a little bit genuine, a little insecure, it's a beautiful quality. Insecurity gets you up in the morning. Fear.
Yeah.
If a deer jumps 20 feet with a lion up its ass, it jumps 30 feet. So 10 feet is a friend, as long as you don't let it freeze you. So
that's
fear,
you
adrenaline,
got to use
all of
fear,
that
fear
stuff
for
is a
fear.
great asset to us, but you have to learn not to listen to it's a negative, it's a positive. It's your body making a super strength, it's making a super charge. If you understand it, you use it. You don't run away. Fear is a friend. I think Rocky said it in a line in the movie. It is a great friend. Just don't shy away from it. Accept, I'm afraid. It's okay. I'm not a pussy. I'm not going to quit. I'm not a quitter. Maybe afraid. I'm still going to fight you, but I'm a little afraid. But that's okay.
Well,
And
listen, no, good things happen.
you
Good things
allow
happen.
you
Good things
allow,
happen, and bad things happen.
you
And
allow the
leading up
fear
to
to
a
help
fight,
you.
it's very much like there's good things and there's positive and there's negative, and you could take that positive, and that's immediately that fuel you can use immediately. You could take that negative; it needs to be processed, and once it's processed, it can also be used. It's also a stimulant. Both the negative and the positive, they're both. It just the negative needs more processing. It needs more thought. It needs more effort, but it can be used to empower you.
We're brought up in a world where they put labels on things like fear, like insecurity, like all of this. You know what? It's part of life.
Yeah.
We're full human beings. Full human beings have great. A full human being has a great. He has courage. He has fear. He has insecurity. He has.
Shortcomings.
He's a full package. It's just not allowing any of the particular elements that we are to override other elements. So
I'm sure you've both seen that footage of a young Mike Tyson with Teddy Atlas crying.
Yeah. But Ben, it's the same thing. I mean, take a look at a defensive fight, a brilliant Muhammad Ali in his heyday, or any of those fighters in their heyday, like the ones that are really adept at defense. It's the fact that they don't want to get hit. That's like a department of fear. It's like, because if you get hit, it's gonna hurt, and you're gonna be hurt, and you could lose. So there is this natural aversion or to fear and the principle and the.
it's about balance. If you have an object,
No, it is balance.
if you have an
Absolutely.
object full of 5 compartments: fear, insecurity, courage, strength, bravery.
Heroism.
It's about not allowing any of the particular elements to override the others. It's about balance. So I'm afraid, but I'm also courageous. So it's like the black wolf and the white wolf. Which one wins? The wolf you feed. So are you going to feed the fear? Are you going to feed the bravery? It's up to you. It's a choice, and it's people sometimes they panic, and you just got to stop. Say, you know what? Okay, I'm a little afraid, but I can deal with that. I've trained. I'm ready. I'm brave. And you
George
rationalize.
Foreman used to talk about being afraid of Joe Frazier and Kenny Norton, and I believe him. He said the famous line about the stare at with Frazier in Jamaica, the first fight, and he said that I was staring down, and my thing was to stare my opponent out to the point where they looked down. He said, but I didn't want Joe Frazier to look down because I didn't want him to see my knees quaking.
It's all about
George is being a little bit.
It's all about where your head's at. It's people underestimate the strength of the mind. I'll give you an example, Ben. If I have a fight with you, Ben, now for no particular reason, who knows what's going to happen? But if I have a fight with you and you have a cause, I'm abusing your son, or I'm doing something disrespectful to your wife, all of a sudden I'm fighting a very dangerous animal.
Different animal. It's so you know what?
And it's the same guy, but his head says "fuck you." I can't lose. And now,
do you know what that reminds me of? Aaron Pryor, when he lost to Howard Davis in the Olympic trials, he said he just lost his mother. How am I supposed to compete with that? Yeah,
yeah. And I've had fights in my life, and I'm nobody. I don't talk like I'm some legend. I'm just an average guy. But I say I've had fights in my life where I've thought he may be better than me, but I also said to myself, he may be better, but he can't fucking beat me. And I beat him every time because I had that mentality. I am not losing today, period. You may be better, but you won't beat me. And it's a big, the conditioning of the mind is so important. And normally it's if you're in an argument and you're right, you'll go to the end of the fucking world because you're right.
Who did you think was better?
And on the contrary, it's always about your opponent as well and what their psychological state is and how those two match up. Because it's easy to say like we're the captains of our own journeys and all the rest of that, but the reality of it is you have an opponent in the ring who's also thinking, breathing, fighting, feeling pain, feeling discomfort, or feeling like a beast and can't lose. That plays a part to it as well. You have to acknowledge those attributes. And
when I fought George Collins, right? No one can underestimate or say he was 73-0.
Yeah,
72 knockouts, right?
No, there wasn't 72 knockouts, Gary. No, it wasn't.
No, yes, he was, Ben.
No, he wasn't. No, he was not.
No. Pull up the record.
Honestly, we'll talk about that tomorrow. That he was not 72 KOs.
I guarantee you,
he was 73-0. Yes, but not KOs. No way KOs.
I read the record, so whether it's true or not, he was 73-0. We know that. But
okay, so what are we saying here? What are we saying? Let's get this on paper because
we will. I know people at Pinewood Star. We'll find that one out.
Okay, because I'll tell you for why. It was one of the things that really bothered me. I was like, no, only one guy has gone the distance with him. That was something I never forgot. But we could check it.
Well, if it was, listen, I know who went the distance with him. If it was, because I know the guy. I know a guy.
Okay, so
but I bet you any money that he didn't have 72 KOs.
Then it's irrelevant. But he was 73-0. It's not a bad record. Okay, so I'm a logical person. So you say 73-0, he must be pretty good, right? Mm-hmm. But then in my heart of hearts, I knew exactly how the fight was going to go. I knew exactly how I was going to beat him. And I would have put my house on it. It's going around.
Yeah.
I looked at him. I saw what he did. I knew exactly how to beat him. And I told my brother, it's not going around.
Okay, so who is? Give me some background. Who is?
Now, let me give you an example. So I don't think there was a faster junior middleweight alive than me. I'm not being funny. I had fast hands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I knew, and Collins used to catch shots all the time. He'd catch and catch. He'd catch and hit you and catch and hit you. And I thought, if I throw my shot full speed, he can't catch me. I'm too fast. He's never going to catch my hands. So I threw half speed, and I let him catch one. Threw another jab, he caught it. Threw another jab, he caught it. Then I threw a feint. He went and catch it, and I just drilled him.
There is right hook.
I knew exactly where it was. If you watch a little feint, he reacts, and I hit with the right hook. It was
the Silk wants a bit of background here. Georgie Collins,
Collins is in the Guinness Book of Records he held 11 titles in 1 year. He had 73-0. He was going for his 12th national title, which would have beat Errol Christie's record.
Yes,
this is as an amateur.
An amateur, Christie had 11 titles. Collins had 11. If he would have won this final championship, it would have been the 12th, which would have been beat Christie's record and been Guinness Book.
Yeah, but he was only 17, so it was a junior success. But he was 73-0. Some people said 72. That's where the numbers I was aware of. But suddenly, this kid from St. Helens called Gary Stretch came along. It was the NABC national final. So basically, 17-year-olds, both on the cusp of senior boxing. It was the final. There was a lot of it was televised, actually. Frank Warren was there. He'd already signed Georgie Collins to turn pro at 17, win or lose. And Gary knocked him out, spark out in one round. And then he became an overnight sensation on the British boxing scene, grassroots.
But, I mean, that's a fight where everyone would say, are you nervous? That was a fight I was not. I saw it. I believed it. I did it,
Yeah.
But it comes down to ability, right? And you know your abilities, and you look at him and you saw his abilities.
My dad gave me the best advice ever because, I was a little, I had moments where I was just thinking, can I beat him? And my dad said to me, Gary, he's beat 73 people, but he's never fought you.
Yeah.
And I never forget that. I said, yeah, he's never fought me. So,
who was the worst fighter you ever lost to?
How you mean worst?
Who's the worst? Like
least good.
Have you lost to anybody?
Julian Monville. I have a loss on my record, which I hate because Julian Monville was one of my early fights, early career. If you watch the fight, you can find it. I've seen it. I catch him in the shot. He starts to run. He's like supposedly an easy fight, just to build my record. And he goes against the ropes, and I throw a left hand and miss, and he hits me head on head. Blood hits the fucking wall. They don't stop it immediately. About 30 seconds later, they stop it, and I get a loss. It's a clash of heads. It should be a no contest, and they put it as a loss.
But I mean, I understand that, but I mean a legitimate like.
The only other pro loss he had was to Chris Eubanks, so he hasn't got a lot.
I only lost to Eubanks. I never lost to anyone else, and before that, I didn't lose an amateur for 10 years.
So he hasn't got experience at losing.
I haven't. When Eubanks beat me, I hadn't lost in, I don't know, 10, 15 years.
And then, so you had lost to that.
Nobody beat me at junior middleweight. I don't want to sound arrogant, but I never got beat at junior middleweight or welterweight.
Wow.
No. So be careful with your diet.
That's pretty amazing.
I was. I have a lot of regret. I don't really think I fulfilled my potential, but that's another story. It's another part.
That's the hardest thing to do, isn't it? Like living with regret and not making the right decisions at the right time. Turn left, right.
Yeah, I think that's why I think Mayweather's an exception, because he got sick of the position he was in with Arum. He bought his contract back, and he made his own journey, And I think we all could have done some of that,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We rely on these.
Yeah.
Like,
that's one of the things I really admire about Mayweather, and that's his strength of mind and decision. I'm sure, obviously he had people on his side with him, but ultimately he himself was able to be the captain of his own ship. Conversely,
why rely on other people, Michael, to run your career when you could do it yourself? I mean, why?
Yeah. But conversely, you're going to have the kind of fire back or kickback you have now. Like people will say, well, you chose your fights and you chose to fight him at the time that was best for you, and not when it was best for everybody. Like there was never a level.
I do think boxing has suffered.
Never a level playing field.
But boxing has suffered as an entertainment industry, as a spectator sport from that blueprint. But you've got to weigh it up if you want to have that debate, the rights and wrongs of it. You have to weigh that up.
I mean, just look at Jake Paul, right? Let's all due respect. No, but all due respect, I think I don't look up at him like a sophisticated business guy, but I look at him thinking this kid is just a YouTuber, Disney kid who's taking on the Arums, the Warrens, the Hearns. He's putting bigger shows on, making more. He's just a kid. Like, fuck me, if he can do it, anyone can do it, right? He's just an example of like someone who gets up and does it. We give so much power away to these people. Like, why could Frank Warren or anyone run my career better than I could run it? I just.
Well, do you know what, Gary? Funny enough, because we were talking about Joe Calzaghe tonight. Him and Roy Jones at that point. Joe reckons he didn't get paid. I think it was for the. I think the Hopkins fight was he claims Warren still owes him money for that. So he didn't want Warren to promote the Jones fight, which is last fight. So he said him and Roy Jones called each other. They had meetings and they did the deal themselves.
Yeah.
Because we're both old enough and ugly enough now that we can make this fight. We don't need them to make it for us. And I've heard people suggest that.
Imagine me at the time. You know, I was not a huge name. I was a big name in my country. I had a following. I could have got a venue, right?
Yeah.
I could have got a venue. Me and you, two mates. Me, you, and Michael get together. We say, all right, Gary, you're gonna fight X, whoever. Get a decent fight. Well, let's go and get Manchester Arena. How much are you going to charge us for the arena? We sell out 10,000 seats, which I did with Eubanks in a day, or 5,000 seats. We get the gate, we get a sponsor, we get TV. Like this, how much money? Why? But when you're back in the day, I was like, you don't think about it. Now you look back. I'm so excited that people are taking the careers into their own hands now. And of course, there's platforms that they can do it. But yeah, we give so much power to people that we really shouldn't. And they've been feeding off us for 50 years, these guys, and continue to.
And Michael, I know, thinks they're overrated. Michael says, when we talk about great Hall of Fame promoters and legendary promoters and this, that, and the other, Michael says this isn't rocket science, what they do.
No, look at Tyson Fury. He's taking Tyson Fury, I love him. He's giving it back to them. He's showing how to create a career. The biggest, what people don't understand. What people don't understand about Tyson Fury? The Ngannou fight is now what is making the Usyk fight so huge, because everyone now is going to tune into the Ngannou because is he going to make it through to get to this one? And if they invest in that to see, then they're going to see the other one. So he's tripling the revenue.
Okay, so check it out.
If you put Tyson Fury against Usyk without the Ngannou fight, there'd be half the interest.
So Ben,
I don't agree with that.
Ben, you're
100%.
2-2, right?
Sorry,
you're 2-2, Ben.
Yeah.
And Gary, you're 2-2.
Yeah.
Welcome to the club, baby.
No, I feel like me and you got ridden a little bit because we
did, but you know it is what it is.
We give Ben one back, yeah.
We're 2-2. We're all on par with Ben. Then the Ngannou and
all even, right?
And Fury fight, the Fury Ngannou fight. What's going to happen?
I will not make a pick on that because it's beneath my dignity. No, forget it. Deal breaker.
Take a pick. Come on. What's it going to hurt?
No way on earth.
No, he's going to win. Fury's going to win.
Real. No way.
How's he going to win? How's he going to win? How's Fury going to win?
He's going to stop him in 3 rounds.
3 rounds? Wow, that's a lot.
Well, that's maximum, yeah. 3 rounds.
Maximum 3 rounds. Ben?
No, forget about it. Forget about it.
Come on, Ben. Don't be on your high horse.
Okay, Ben, just for fun. Say it for fun.
Fury will win. Fury will win.
Fury will win. Like what? Decision or will he KO him?
Be lucky you even got that much from me. Fury wins.
But is it KO or stoppage or decision?
Who gives a fuck? I don't know if it carries a motherfucker. I don't care. He will win. He can't lose.
Wait, is this a 10? Is this a 10-rounder or is it?
Do you know what? I'll tell you what's interesting, fellas, as we draw somewhat to a close. We've been going, it's been a brilliant show tonight. We've been going over an hour. But listen.
I've never seen Ben so passionate.
Do you know what? Yeah. Do you know what's funny?
That's what his wife said too.
Listen. It's not listed on BoxRec. Because I was looking at Gary's claim about, not his claim, it was on IFL TV that they said Hearn rips British Boxing Board of Control for sanctioning Fury and Ngannou. I watched that, Gary. And I thought, so if you look on a show like last night in Liverpool, yeah, it says on BoxRec, Commission, British Boxing Board of Control, or it might say Commission, New York State Athletic Commission, Nevada State Athletic Commission, right? I looked at Fury and Ngannou purely to see what the commission was, and it's not listed on BoxRec at all, which means right now it does not have the status of a professional prize fight. Why are they not listing it?
Well, I guess it shouldn't be.
But you saw the Eddie Hearn.
I did. But it's not even listed on BoxRec. So how the hell has the board sanctioned anything?
Well, I guess they can always do it later, right? They can always just put the
Well,
record
it's not
in.
happened yet, so I don't know.
Yeah, but fights of that magnitude are listed on BoxRec.
Yeah, but they don't have to be.
But they are. The reason why they haven't listed it, it's not like they haven't heard of it, Michael.
Yeah, but
there's a reason why that's not listed on BoxRec.
Remember, Ben,
Is there a belt on the line?
This is the world of professional boxing.
No, it's
Whatever
not.
Goes, whatever goes, obviously.
It's not. Listen, I look at BoxRec all the time. I know about this. The fight is listed if someone's got a fight coming up. You can see. Look at Regis Prograis or Devin Haney. Look on their BoxRec.
So you're telling me that if Tyson loses this fight, it's not going to say what's his record now. They're not going to put a 1 at the end of it.
All I'm telling you is they're not listing it right now, which makes me wonder if it's even accredited as a professional fight. Because
that's what I'm saying. Is the whole world going to say he was like, what's he? He's got no losses, right? He has a draw.
No, he has no losses. Just a 1 draw. Yeah.
Ben, who wins the Haney fight?
I like Haney for that one. I like Haney for that one.
Which one?
Devin Haney versus Regis Prograis for the I think it's a WBO like welterweight title, but it's one of them.
Did you see the other ridiculous possibility was Mayweather v Tank?
Oh my God, that's
you said something about that. And they're talking about Mayweather Pacquiao again, another exhibition. But once again, with the best all due respect, fellas, who cares? If some people want to watch it, then that's fair enough. But it's a free market, free world. But why should it be of any interest to us? If Mayweather does anything, I went to Mayweather's last exhibition against some Geordie fella.
Well, you know what? Because there's a lot of drama concerned with this fight. Like if he fights Tank, him and Tank. I mean, he was Tank's dude, right? He was his manager, promoter, all the rest of that kind of stuff. There's a lot of So there's a lot of they cross a lot of lines. It's a very personal fight if that were to happen. I don't know if they've ever moved together before in the ring. I'm sure maybe they must have at some point, but I tune into that. I would.
That would be like watching Ben versus Michael.
Yeah.
Ben,
Ben.
Oh, this Ben. Oh, I thought you meant Nigel Ben.
Hey, you two fighting. There's a lot of history.
maybe one time we'll all go into like a basement somewhere, and like that Rocky scene with Apollo. Be like, let's have a little move
and
around.
Apollo at the end. Yeah. Okay. So we'll do a round robin, and we'll do you two first.
And, no, you two first. I'll fight the winner. What's that?
Yeah.
You two first, and
On that note, guys, I've enjoyed this show tonight more than somewhat.
And thank everybody for writing in your questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them. We will try,
but we are highlighting them now, so they feel that we're not ignoring them. I'm glad I can press this button, see, and it brings up the comments. So I hope you feel we're being a bit more attentive with that. Sometimes it's hard to address them all, but we'll be back next week. I don't know if we're doing Friday yet because I'll have to talk with my colleagues here. We'll definitely be back next Sunday, though, by which time the Fury and Gano event will be history, and no doubt there'll be some more impassioned discussions about it.
Why did you say we were colicky? He said, Gary, did you hear that? He said we're colic.
He knows. See, this is a classic fucking silkism. Just as I'm trying to be slick and close it out.
You said that we were colicky. That's not good.
No, he said colleagues.
Colleagues.
Meaning friends. What did you think he said?
He said colleagues.
One thing I'll tell you right now, you can write this in stone. It is impossible to close the show in a slick fashion with Michael Alajide. You cannot do it. So let's just, you know what? Instead of cutting these ends off, let's let them just hang in the air forever.
But colicky is a real thing. Why are you denying colicky is a real thing? When you have a baby and if you give it,
Michael, do you remember when you said to me, "Don't interrupt Ben in the beginning"?
Yeah.
I would like to say to you, "Don't interrupt Ben in the end."
I'm trying to.
It's very important to make it clear. Colicky is.
I would like to say to a few followers that we have, without further ado, my partner and colleague, Keeg, will close the show down. Ben Doherty can lead us out.
Okay, thanks for listening to this disjointed but charismatic discussion, fellas. We will be back next Sunday, maybe Friday if you're lucky. In the meantime, and don't forget Ace Podcast Nation who make this all possible. In the meantime, be lucky, keep punching.